Hello and welcome to a very special breaking episode of MMO Weekly. I'm your host, Sal Manzo, joined by Mathias Kirasaki and MMO's Matt Mancuso. Matthias, I just spoke to you a couple days ago. We had Pat Ragazzo on the show talk about timing. Between now and then, Brandon Nimmo was traded to the Texas Rangers for Marcus Semien. Straight up swap. 32-year-old going for swapping for a 35-year-old infielder. Semien plays a great defensive second base. Has faltered offense over the last two seasons, especially sub 700 OPS. But somebody that has slugged in his career. Won a World Series with the Rangers, was the captain, I believe, of the Rangers. So for him to accept the trade too is kind of crazy. But Brandon Nimmo, who's drafted by the Mets, spent 14 years here from the time being drafted in 2011 to now. A guy they signed to a long-term contract a couple of years ago. At times, a fan favorite, and at times felt like the heartbeat of the team. Is no more. With what happened last year, changes were inevitably going to come, but this was not something I saw coming. I don't think a lot of people did. Matthias, we're going to get your thoughts here real quick, just reacting on the trade that went down yesterday.
I mean, frankly, I was stunned. I will say, I thought there was a slight chance that Nimmo got moved. I did not expect it to happen this quickly, and I was not expecting it to be this trade right here. I had a feeling if they moved him, it was going to be some type of contract for contract move. I did not have Semien remotely on my radar for this. I know Semien is still a strong defender. He's still pretty fast. I know his bat has declined, but I know the Rangers are kind of in a weird position where they won the World Series in 2023, had 2 down years following it. So, I mean, I had a feeling they would trade off some pieces. I did not even consider Semien to be one of the guys. And like you said, he was the captain of the team. He had a limited no trade clause that the Yankees and Mets weren't on. And I'm sure, I know Nimmo said in his press conference that it was a complete shock to him. They had just finished building a home in Port St. Lucie. So it sounds like, though, I mean, he consulted Jacob deGrom about it. He consulted Chris Young about it. So it was stunning. I'm not going to lie. I was at a swim meet yesterday. I had just finished up racing. I got out the pool, checked my phone. The first notification I get, like 60 seconds later, was that Nimmo had gotten traded. I still can't believe it. Still can't believe he's not a Met, but I understand why they did it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple avenues that we can really analyze this trade through. And the first thing that I'll talk about is really the gut punch I received when I also received that notification. As you said, Nimmo was a fan favorite. I was the fan who really liked him, who really appreciated how he was a rare homegrown Met position player that succeeded. He's arguably like a top 5 Met position player since he's come up. He's had just a string of incredible seasons. It's really kind of helped usher in a sustained era of Mets regular season regular season success, and that's not an era that's really happened a lot in the team. He's had a ton of iconic moments. Who can forget his home run saving catch, where I believe Justin Turner was hitting and deGrom pitching. That kind of exemplified who Nimmo was. He was a leader on and off the field, and he really exemplified everything you're looking for from a first rounder. He signed a contract that really I thought would cement that he would end his career with the Mets, and ensure 9 was put in the rafters someday. But I do still think 9's going to be in the rafters one day, and it's going to be, as a fan, it's going to be really disappointing to see his career most likely end with another team.
Yeah, I mean, especially since they signed him to that long-term deal a couple of years ago, you thought somebody that seemed to have great relationship with the new ownership, with the Cohens, that seemed to be something that was there. How important the NLCS was to him, and just getting to that moment in 2024. But I mean, it says a few things, right? I mean, it says that at least the current regime, obviously Stearns didn't give out that contract to Nimmo when he got that 8-year deal a couple of years ago. But to me, it obviously says they would rather 3 years of Marcus Semien, see what you get, than 5 more years of Nimmo. Obviously, Nimmo's contract is more friendly in the sense that it's less AAV, going on 5 years as opposed to 3 from Semien. Nimmo is 3 years younger. Nimmo's 32 as opposed to Semien, who's, I believe, 35, turning 36. And as of now, over the last couple of years especially, Nimmo is clearly the better offensive player. I'm very surprised by this. I would have liked personally if they were going to trade somebody like Nimmo to get a quality arm back. Obviously it seems like they're prioritizing defense here, but I still don't really understand, the swap for that sort of player. And besides the fact that they want to open up an outfield spot, I think that's pretty clear too. Whether they're going to make a splash for a Bellinger or a Tucker, which if you don't do that, frankly, then this move just doesn't feel like it should have been made. We were talking off camera, but another thing that maybe could happen, and I would not like to see this because I don't want to hear anything about money coming from these Mets. But they, to clear some payroll for, if you want to bring back Alonso and Diaz, you have a $1 billion player in Juan Soto. Francisco Lindor is making a lot of money. They may want to offset some of these contracts with someone like a Carson Bench playing in the outfield. That could be something that they do too. I hope that's not the case, that they're just trying to, shed kind of payroll here to make other moves. I don't agree with that, especially with there's no salary cap and that sort of thing. The Mets should be in a position where they should be able to flex their finances. But it's very shocking. I mean, you could allude to the fact that maybe things in the clubhouse, maybe Nimmo, there wasn't a fit there any longer. That could be a thing too, but it's just there's a lot of layers, and it's just a lot to go off of here. Obviously this isn't the last move the Mets are going to make. There's obviously a bigger plan to this, and we'll have to see the way it plays out. But for right now, Matt hated it so much he left. So we'll get him back. But Mathias, I mean, again, man, I don't know. I don't see, outside of defense, which again, I wouldn't be trading the significantly better offensive player, in my opinion, for defense. That this is the road that they're going. And
yeah, I know the thing I see here is that Nimmo is turning 33 in March. His defense has declined, his speed has declined, and his offensive approach has, yes, it's increased his power output. He hit 25 home runs a career high. He drove in a career high 92 runs, but all that, and his OPS was still only around 760. That's, sure. It's solid. It's not spectacular. And clearly with his decline in defense and speed, I don't think that's enough of a bat where he can be an everyday DH. And I understand he hits the ball hard still. His hard hit rate was about 50%. But there were signs that this contract probably wasn't going to age super gracefully. You think about how volatile this fan base is. Nimmo would have been getting about 21 million when he was 37.
Right.
And knowing this fan base, it would have. I was kind of worried about what would happen if he did stick around the full length of the deal. Because like I said, this fan base can turn on players really quickly.
Sure.
And God forbid he was the one that was on a bloated contract late in his career, not producing. God knows what the fan base would have reacted like. But I'm still processing it all. Like Matt, I was a huge fan of Brandon Nimmo. Got to meet him after a game last year, take a picture with him. He was I made a post on Facebook and Twitter about it. He was the last player to leave that day. Mm-hmm. He could have just left and gone home, but he took time to sign and take pictures with everyone who was there. So he really endeared himself to the fan base. And I think it shows how much that the fan base's reaction to him getting traded, it really just shows how much he meant to the team, the fans, and the franchise. So it's a tough pill to swallow. Like I said, from a baseball perspective, I understand why they did it. Now it's about, what do you do after it? What do you do to replace him? What do you do to improve the roster?
So I think my angle of viewing this trade is, I talked about how at the beginning there are several ways to analyze this trade. In the beginning, I talked about the fan perspective. But coming from an analytical perspective, every time I look at this trade from a different angle, I think the Mets fleece the Rangers, and I'll try to explain why. Baseball Savant just released a new tool that allows you to see how many runs a team would lose in free agency. So based on the free agency of Alonso and Marte and Cedric Mullins, the Mets are projected to lose 17 runs. And a way to equate it is, don't think of runs as in just like, we're touching home plate. That's a run is a way to design and quantify value in baseball. 1 run two is 10 runs is also equivalent to 1 win. So the Mets, by potentially losing Alonso and Marte, and Mullins, are on pace to lose 17 runs coming into the winter. If you add Brandon Nimmo to that equation, the Mets are projected to lose 20 runs. So the Mets right now are projected to lose about 2 wins. But what do we know coming into the winter? We know the Mets got very unlucky in 2025, sorry, and that's shown in their expected win-loss percentage. If you look at how many runs they allowed and how many runs they scored, they were expected to actually win 87 games, which would be enough to put them in the playoffs. So I'm going to use that kind of as my baseline. So the Mets, if they run it back with the same players, would have won about 87 games coming into next season. However, they're projected to lose 2 wins because they lost 20 runs from their trio of free agents and Brandon Nimmo. And that's where Marcus Semien comes into the equation. If you look at him last season, he was worth -1 run. So if you just look at that as a fact, Marcus Semien does not help the Mets in 2026. However, if you can also say that he greatly underperformed his expected stats. If you look at his difference between his expected WOBA and his actual WOBA, it was one of the largest in the game. So if you can regress Simeon's offensive stats to what he's expected to put up next season, that actually greatly changes the equation. So instead of being worth -1 runs, Semien, if he produces the way he's expected to based on his quality of contact, that's actually a swing of 10 runs. So the Mets are actually gain 1 win compared to where they were coming into the Nimmo deal. So in essence, trading Brandon Nimmo for Marcus Semien generated the Mets an additional win coming into the season, which I find kind of insightful because I think those are the same analytics or a similar mold of what David Stearns and co kind of consulted while making this decision. And that's not even talking about the far-reaching effects on payroll, in roster balance, in line of protection, and in clubhouse change. Clearly, something had to change with the Mets' former core. And this is just, as Sal was alluding to, this is just the first this is just the first domino to fall. I think there are additional moves. I don't love this move in a vacuum, but I understand that this is a process, and the process has yet to be played out.
Yeah, and I think I want to add also that David Stearns said that this wasn't necessarily about clubhouse culture, rather that he saw that the team underperformed this year and that something had to change. They couldn't just afford to run it back, this same roster that faded really badly late in the year. So I think it's important to acknowledge that. But I do agree with you. I think I'm keeping my eye on Jeff McNeil. I think, especially after getting Semien another second baseman, McNeil's turning 34 in April. He had injuries each of the last 2 years. He dealt with thoracic outlet syndrome this year. He had a really, really rough month of September. So that's my next guy, I think, that gets traded. But yeah, I remember we did a roundtable last night for the website, and I mean, for most of us, it's kind of hard to grade this deal without knowing what's coming next.
Of course, and I think. Oh, sorry, I was just going to add.
Go ahead.
I think this move exemplifies one of Stearns' themes that he talked about at the end of season press conference. He came out guns blazing. That's really not a way that we've ever seen David Stearns. We've seen him measured. We've seen him analytical. We've seen him calculated. He made it known which players would be on the team next year and which players didn't. And the players that would be on the team are players that are good defensively, are players that can help out with their base running, are players that you would honestly find either on the Houston Astros or the Milwaukee Brewers. I don't really think Brandon Nimmo fit that mold anymore. If you look at the seasons past, where he was leading the majors in swing decisions, or he was very high up among the league leaders. I think that's kind of a tool set that Stearns really wants in his team. And Brandon Nimmo, he has a chronic foot condition. If you look at his swing speed, if you look at his sprint speed, those are all declining. Um, and I think it's easier just to trade 5 years of his contract and acquire 3 years of an equivalent financial value when I think you're getting the better value in terms of on-field production.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that the metrics you brought up are really interesting, Matt. To hear that. Yeah, I mean, I do think that David Stearns is emphasizing, defense, players that can run more. I again, in a vacuum, I still don't like the trade. If you're going to move somebody like Nimmo, I would have rather have gotten a quality arm than swap like this with Semien. I don't know how much left he has in the tank, but again, you know. Looking forward, and again to what could happen, hopefully this means that there's a Kyle Tucker. I'd rather Tucker over Bellinger. Obviously Tucker's a better player at this point. Either would be good. But you still have a lot to do here, and that's on top of bringing back, like we talked about on a couple days ago, Mathias, bringing back an Alonso and Edwin Diaz. Still have a lot of pitching to do, so we'll see. It's interesting, but I do also agree that Jeff McNeil is probably the next person to get out of here. I don't know how much he brings back, right? You'll see. As you mentioned, he's in his mid-30s. Health is a problem, declining numbers. So, you see we can get there, but they are going to shake up this core. But I hope they don't do it, though, by letting somebody like Pete Alonso walk. They shouldn't do that. Don't do that. And
Yeah, I was thinking the ramifications of having Simeon and re-signing Alonso, and maybe there's a thought that having an elite defender next to someone who isn't an elite defender in Alonso could help balance out the Mets infield alignment and really connect to what Stearns is talking about, which is run prevention. Getting younger. Brandon Nimmo has decreased. Last season, he had a 2.84 expected WOBA on non-fastballs, so he's swinging and missing on anything breaking, anything off speed. And if I'm recognizing that just based on public data, I'm sure teams are recognizing that, and they're
sure.
making adjustments to how they pitch to him. They recognize he's not the offensive potent threat that he once was. They recognize his swing decisions may not be what they were. And as much as it kind of sucks, baseball is a numbers game. David Stearns is not here to generate jersey sales. David Stearns is here to win World Series, and I think trading Brandon Nimmo for Marcus Semien puts the Mets a lot closer to this goal in the upcoming season and in the seasons coming.
Yeah, and I appreciate that Stearns, and he's spoken about before, he's not operating as a fan. He's operating as an executive. He wants to win. So, yeah, it's like I said, it hurts. Obviously, it's going to be weird seeing Nimmo play in a jersey that isn't the Mets. But, what I also like, and I know that he said it's not about clubhouse culture necessarily, but Marcus Semien has always been praised as a great clubhouse guy and a leader. I know he was essential to mentoring the young players in Oakland back when he was there. And he was praised for that in Texas too. He has been to a World Series. He's won a World Series. And also before this year, which I believe he got hurt fouling a ball off his ankle. Before this year, he had missed like 3 games in the previous 5 years. So he will go out there, and as long as he's healthy, not fouling balls off his ankle, he will take the field every single day. And I think there's value in that. That's what I loved about Pete Alonso.
Sure.
That's what I loved about Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto, is that they not only will they produce, they will be there every single day. So I think it'll be nice to have a steady presence on the team.
Yeah. And sure, those guys may be there as everyday guys, but I think the important thing to consider is how are they going to format the bench to really optimize matchups, because that's what Stearns is known for in Milwaukee. How does he make the most out of this guy, out of the guys he has available on the team, and how does he optimize each matchup to make it as likely as possible that the hitter at hand helps produce an event that leads to a Mets win. So I think that's really what's next, figuring out what complementary pieces are going to fit the 2026 New York Mets. I think this is one of the many moves to occur.
Yeah, agreed. And to your points about Nimmo, fast approach from being, more of a full-time DH. I think to that point, the Mets have a couple of those guys, especially if you re-sign Alonso. So that's got to be a consideration too. So, hopefully that is, then a sign to that they will be bringing back Pete. But it's definitely a shocking trade that happened. I think there's no question about it. He was a fan favorite, so people are going to feel a certain type of way. But I do think we really have to see the rest of the moves that are made in complement to this. And there should be a lot, and because there's going to need to be, or else this Mets team's still not going to be very good next year. So they have a lot of work to do. But we'll wrap it up for this special episode. Hopefully nothing crazy happens between now and the next time we tape, or else we'll hop back on here again. But thanks for listening as always, and we'll catch you again when the next move happens for the Mets, as the hot stove is cooking here. So as always, everybody, let's go Mets.